As the train came to a stop, Nick glanced out the window and suddenly noticed a strange man on the platform. He was crushing his phone, which he had just finished using, before tossing it into a nearby trash can. At first, Nick didn't pay much attention, but as an experienced cop, he had an innate sense of danger. Not long after the train departed, he observed a panicked-looking attendant scanning the crowd in each car, nervously knocking on the restroom doors. These signs confirmed to Nick that something was amiss. For the safety of everyone on board, he decided to take action. He approached the attendant, revealing his identity as a London police sergeant, and asked what was going on. Once the attendant verified his credentials, she pulled Nick into a nearby staff room. She had just received a call from the counterterrorism unit. There was a strong possibility that a suicide bomber was on the train, planning to detonate explosives as they arrived at London Station. With only 7 minutes left before reaching their destination, Nick understood the urgency. Although the police were already deployed at the next stop, he knew that if a suicide bomber was hiding in one of the restrooms, any hint of trouble could trigger an immediate detonation. Looking back at his children still asleep in their seats, Nick decided he couldn't just wait and do nothing. He first identified the restroom where the suspect might be hiding, then stepped into the corridor to call the attendant. He instructed her that, upon hearing his command, she should immediately open the train doors so he could apprehend the suspect and throw him off the train. When the restroom door opened, to Nick's surprise, it was the same man he had seen at the station, but he clearly looked like he was just there to use the bathroom. Seeing that there was no immediate threat, Nick informed the attendant that the danger had passed. Relieved, he decided to use the restroom to calm his nerves. But in the next moment, a woman holding the bomb's detonation button looked panicked at Nick. Sensing her distress, Nick immediately switched to her native language to communicate. This seemed to have a calming effect on her, as her agitation appeared to lessen. Seizing the moment, Nick began to empathize with her, passionately condemning the actions of locals to further stabilize her emotions. However, just then, the woman suddenly became anxious again. Nick continued to urge her to remain calm. Thankfully, she ultimately refrained from pressing the detonator. Taking advantage of her slightly stabilized emotions, Nick called for the attendant to evacuate the passengers in the adjacent cars. Once he saw his children safely evacuated, Nick switched to a gentle tone, starting a conversation with the woman. He learned that her name was Aisha, and that the seemingly harmless man from earlier was her husband. It was clear that Aisha had been brainwashed and coerced by him. To elicit her compassion and persuade her to disarm the bomb, Nick pulled out photos of his own children, hoping to awaken her deepest maternal instincts. Just then, the train pulled into the station, and the sound of police sirens blared nearby, startling Aisha, who immediately slammed the restroom door shut.